Good morning, welcome back to Football League World TV. It's time for another episode of The Debate, and here we're looking at the winners and losers in the EFL across the Easter weekend. I'm your host, Dagless, and joining me this morning are Toby Wilding and Marcus Ali. Toby, how are you? How's your Easter?
Well, as we're going to see when we get to the losers bit, awful, mate. But yeah, no, other than that, another interesting weekend in the EFL on the whole. So, going to be really interesting to, as I say, take a look at a few of the teams who came out of this pretty well and some of the sides who really didn't.
Yeah, unfortunately, Toby, we will have to touch on your team during the losers section of this debate. Marcus, how are you?
Yeah, really well, thanks. Got some Easter eggs and also some humble pie in terms of the EFL results. So going to be, looking forward to talking about that later on in the show. But yeah, excited for to reflect on what was a lot of action in a slightly different format today. So yeah, plenty to get into. This section of the season really does pull on the heartstrings for me.
Yeah, it certainly does. Just a few games left to go now in the Championship League 1 and League 2. What an important weekend it was for every team. And a few relegations were confirmed as well over the course of the last match rounds. Let's get straight into it, though. EFL fans, do get in touch with us as well. We're on Facebook, YouTube and Twitter for the next 25 or so minutes. Toby, we'll come to you first of all in the winner section. Who's your first pick for one of the winners over the course of the last few days?
Yeah, my first pick, I'll start in the Championship, and I'm going to go with Luton Town here. I think it was a really big weekend for the Hatters, wasn't it? Obviously, coming into this winless in the last three before Good Friday, and off the back of a pretty damaging defeat to another side who they were really battling with for a playoff spot in the shape of Huddersfield Town, and then on the back of that, started the weekend against the Nottingham Forest side, who really looked to be a bit unbeatable at the minute, didn't they? With sort of the run they were on. So for Luton to then welcome Forest to Kenilworth Road and get a real statement win there with that 1-0 victory, that was a huge result on its own, which sort of really does lay down a marker when it comes to the actual playoffs in a few weeks' time, that they are a side who can compete with anyone. And I think then after that to sort of go to Cardiff yesterday, and it wasn't perhaps the most convincing of results, just the 1-0 win there, but it was very much a job done. They had to make sure they went and built on that win over Forest, and they just went there and made sure they did that. So two really big wins for Nathan Jones's side there, and you sort of look at the table now, 6 points clear of Millwall in seventh with just the 3 games to go. You'd have to really say that probably does now mean that Luton's playoff spot is very close to being certain, really. And when you sort of consider the situation they were in and the expectations that were maybe on them come the start of the campaign, that just really sort of rounds off what has been an excellent season for Luton with a really big Easter weekend that really does give them a good shot of promotion via the playoffs, and maybe just a little glimmer of a chance of automatics as well.
Yeah, it's such a productive weekend, wasn't it, for Luton? Not only did they underline their playoff credentials again by beating a Nottingham Forest side that's been sensational in recent months, but then they kind of ground out a result against Cardiff, and you also saw them benefit from a lot of the sides around them or just below them tripping up over the course of the Easter weekend. And that kind of brings us to your first winner, Marcus, in Millwall, a team that largely benefited and got themselves right back into the top 6 race ahead of the final few games.
Yeah, absolutely. Selecting Millwall is more to do with the Middlesbrough, Sheffield United and Blackburn dropping points. In my eyes, this is the first point in the season, or at least since the turn of the year, where I've really classed Millwall as realistic playoff contenders, to be honest. I didn't expect to see drop-offs from the Blades and from Middlesbrough from the way that they were playing under Heckingbottom and Wilder in the last few months. So yeah, only a 1-1 draw at Preston and a narrow win over Hull City, but they're now just 1 point behind Sheffield United in 6th place. Their goal difference isn't ideal, so it is likely that they probably will have to win a large portion of their remaining games, because if they're on the same points compared to the sides around them, they are likely to get bumped down on goal difference. But they've got a nice run in: Birmingham away, Peterborough at home, and then Bournemouth away on the final day, which they could have second place wrapped up by the way it's going. So that could also end up proving to be quite a kind fixture. So yeah, in terms of a team that's sort of gone to a completely different sort of place in the table and sort of increased their chances in my mind significantly, I've had to go with Millwall. Because yeah, as I said, it's the first time in the season since the turn of the year for me that I do think that they're very realistic playoff contenders. And yeah, Gary Rowett deserves so much credit, because a few months ago we would have said that their season was just fizzling out and it was looking like a mid-table finish, similar to what we've seen in recent years. But now to be just 1 point behind the Blades, it's really exciting time to be a Millwall supporter.
Yeah, it was such a fascinating weekend, wasn't it? Really, for that playoff race, a lot of sides, as I mentioned, sort of tripping over themselves. And you look at it now: Sheffield United in 6th on 66 points, right down to Coventry in 11th, just 4 points back. You probably would have a few weeks ago ruled out the likes of Sky Blues, but the way it is now, even if there are only sort of 3 games left to go for Coventry, they're in there too, and Mill absolutely right in with a shout after the last set of games over Easter. Let's talk next winner, Toby. We're dropping into League One for this one.
Yeah, my next winner is, as you say, a team who got a really big result in the League One promotion race on Saturday, and that's Rotherham United. Coming into that one off the back of those 3 straight defeats, which I don't think anyone really saw coming, if we're being honest, with the form they've been in before then. There was a huge amount of pressure on Paul Warne's side, sort of to really keep themselves in those automatic promotion contention, especially with the form that the sides around them had sort of been in. But that was all sort of very much flipped on its head over the weekend. It was Rotherham who came up with a really big 1-0 win at home to Ipswich. Michael Smith, yet again, the man to step up and do the business for the Millers, as he has done so far so many times this season. And of course, it wasn't just the fact that Rotherham got back to winning ways there that was important. It was the results again for those sides around them. Wigan slipping up unexpectedly at home to Cambridge, and MK Dons beaten by Sheffield Wednesday. So that obviously puts Rotherham back into the top 2, with a game in hand still on MK Dons as well. And obviously with them playing Saturday, they've still got their second game of the week to come this evening. But again, that looks like a really big opportunity for Rotherham to maybe put a little bit more breathing space between them when you look at sort of the nature of the fixtures. Paul Warne's side obviously going to a Burton team with not a lot to play for at all, and with a season that really just looks to be sort of staggering out to not a great deal really. By contrast, MK Dons, again, they've got another tricky trip to an Oxford team who really themselves need a win to keep their own playoff chances alive. So that could make things hard for the Dons. And then Wigan again, that I think when you're looking at that with regards to Rotherham, it'd be more in terms of a battle for the title, which is not the priority in comparison to automatic promotion. But nevertheless, the Latics, again, they've got Ipswich away. So that's not an easy test by all accounts. So when you take all that into mind, I think that was a really sort of big few results on Saturday for Rotherham in terms of the automatic promotion race, and it just sets them up, I think, quite well to maybe try and really sort of move back into a significantly stronger position to secure a place back in the Championship again over the next few weeks with the games to come tonight.
Yeah, they're just threatening to wobble, weren't they, the Millers, in recent weeks? But a big result against a handy Ipswich team, it must be said. You got to kind of back them now to put what's gone behind them and just get themselves over the line in the final few games. Marcus, we'll stick in League One with your next winner.
Yeah, the only team involved in the relegation battle still to win a game in the Easter bank holiday weekend was Morecambe at Charlton on Friday. And then they picked up a really important draw at home to Portsmouth yesterday with Jonah Ayunga scoring a 93rd minute equaliser. So to take 4 points from those 2 fixtures was huge. Gives them a 3-point cushion on the relegation zone with Fleetwood sitting 4th bottom. They've got a really tricky run in as well. So yeah, it's really enormous. And considering Morecambe's running, it was vital that they picked up points in these two games. They got Milton Keynes Dons away, and then Sunderland at home on the final day. They could end up getting beaten in both of those matches. So yeah, it really was a huge result, particularly at the Valley on Friday. Cole Stockton getting on the score sheet. It'd be interesting to see what happens with him in the summer. But yeah, huge credit to Derek Adams for arresting their slide. I think it's taken him a little bit of time to sort of switch approach. He looked to be trying to focus in on the defence before. Now he's sort of accepted that they are going to concede goals and that they're going to try and hurt teams going forward, and it's really paid dividends. So yeah, an enormous 4 points that could prove to end up keeping them up. I'd probably say they need one more point maybe to feel really secure, because Fleetwood do have Wimbledon coming up at home this weekend. So even though they've been playing very poorly, that has to be an opportunity considering Wimbledon's form. But no, a huge couple of results. And yeah, the sort of emotional boost of a 93rd minute equaliser to get you that extra little bit of cushion over the bottom four must be enormous. So yeah, a really good Easter bank holiday weekend at a critical time for Morecambe. So yeah, they look in the driving seat to keep their spot in League One this season.
Probably quite happy as well, seeing both Fleetwood and Gillingham draw as well on the Easter Monday. Obviously, Fleetwood have Wimbledon coming up too, big game down at the bottom. Keeping with the winners, then we'll just drop into League Two now before we move on to the losers. Toby, who's your pick from the fourth tier?
Yeah, my winner in League Two was Sutton United. I mean, what a huge couple of results for them, and just a reminder of how tight things are in this League Two promotion and playoff race at the minute. Really, I mean, Sutton were 10th coming into the Easter weekend, which I mean on its own was a remarkable achievement for them. Really, if you consider this is their first season in the EFL, and I don't think anyone was really expecting them to sort of be anywhere near that playoff mix by this stage of the season, but they still were, and then they've gone and improved on that over the weekend. 2 huge wins against sides who like them are very much in this playoff contention. 3-2 again at Mansfield on the Friday, then 1-0 at home to Newport on the Monday. So again, as I mentioned earlier, sort of 2 results that really lay down a marker for Sutton when it comes to a potential playoff campaign, in terms of we can beat anyone in this sort of mix, and they are now back up there into 6th as well. So a playoff spot is very much theirs to lose, especially when you look at who they've got in their running. It's a trip to a struggling Barrow side next, then it's Crawley and Bradford, 2 teams who have very little to play for, and Bradford in particular, really, again, they seem to be fizzling out quite disappointingly this season. So, there's an opportunity there for Sutton to really sort of make a playoff spot at the minimum quite comfortable for them after 2 really big wins here against sides who they are competing with for those top 7 places. So another excellent weekend for Sutton in what has been a really impressive season for them, in my opinion.
Yeah, Sutton really finishing strongly, aren't they? They perhaps sort of threatened to maybe drop away from the playoff places at one point not too long ago, but they've wrestled it right back into their control, and they could be a force in the playoffs should they make the final, the top 7 before the end of the campaign. Marcus, we're keeping in League Two as we did in League One. Your winner is down near the bottom of the table, though.
Yeah, I've gone for Barrow. They went into the bank holiday weekend only outside the relegation zone on goal difference, and they leave it with a 4-point cushion. The same can be said about Stevenage, but I've just gone for Barrow just above Steve Evans' side due to probably, in my opinion, the result of the weekend across all of the EFL, beating Forest Green 4-0 on Good Friday. I really did not see that one coming at all. I've been quite vocal about doubting Phil Brown's capabilities to keep them up, to be honest, and he's completely proved me wrong with 2 huge results. Fair play to him. He'll probably end up getting the job going into next season, considering he's taken a huge step towards saving them at least. The second result as well, very impressive, a 2-2 draw away at playoff chasing Salford, and they actually led till late on. Ian Henderson getting an 89th minute equaliser, so slightly leaving the door ajar, but still, on the face of it, going into that match, that is a terrific result, considering, well, over the last few months, Salford have probably been on much better form than Forest Green anyway. So, a really impressive result. And, compared to the sides around them, it is looking bleak for Oldham now. So Barrow, a team that I was really worried about and had them as my favourite of the three to probably drop. As ended up smashing the league leaders at home 4-0 and then taking a good point off Salford. So yeah, fair play to Phil Brown, has clearly got them playing. They would deserve results as well. No smash and grab element to it, really. They did give as good as they got, and definitely warranted the 4 points that they took. They still have a difficult running, but they do have a game in hand on Oldham as well as that 4-point cushion. So with 4 games to go, it's looking pretty good for Barrow. They've just turned it on when they needed to, because it was starting to look very worrying. But no, definitely a standout team in League Two for me, because I had them looking towards the National League, and now they look probably need a couple more points if Oldham do have a sort of resurgence, but they can be feeling pretty comfortable despite conceding that late equaliser at Salford, that they're going to be playing in League Two again next season.
As you mentioned, that fixture list, that the final 6 they had was looking pretty daunting. I think it's fair to say they've still got Sutton, Exeter, Swindon, and Northampton to come, which is on paper still difficult, but given the way they've sort of dispatched the Forest Green, and obviously got a good result against Salford as well, they'll be feeling a lot more confident about it, won't they, Marcus? Before the end of the season. Okay, time to move to the losers now across the Easter weekend. Toby, unfortunately, it has come to the time where we're going to have to talk about your team and Blackburn Rovers. The fall away from the playoffs has continued, hasn't it, over Easter?
Yeah, I mean, sort of going into this Easter weekend, it really was. It felt now or never for Blackburn, in terms of if they were going to really back up what was an excellent first half of the season by getting a top 6 spot, and they just did not take that opportunity. I mean, you look at the 2 fixtures that they had over the Easter weekend. On the Good Friday, it was a trip to a Peterborough side who just, as has been the case all season, have really been, sort of struggling to find a way to win at the minute. And, a side who Rovers absolutely brushed aside at Ewood Park in the first half of the season. That was probably one of their most convincing performances of the campaign in a 4-0 win over Posh, and they just couldn't get close to matching that on Friday. Admittedly, the red card probably didn't help for Teo Adun, and there's maybe a little bit of a contention around whether or not Ben Brereton should have had his header ruled out at 0-0 when it was still 11 against 11. But nevertheless, it was the sort of game that Rovers just needed to make sure that they won, and they couldn't do that. And then again, similar story yesterday against Stoke. It was another absolutely dismal first half performance from Rovers, which is just really becoming a worrying theme for them at the minute. Absolutely gifted Stoke a goal in the first 5 minutes. I mean, it was a well-taken finish by Jacob Brown, in fairness, but he didn't have to do a great deal to get into that position and put it in the back of the net, really. And again, as with a struggling Peterborough side, this is a Stoke side who have been so inconsistent this season and who had nothing left to play for. But sort of again, as I say, sort of looking at this in the first 45 minutes, it was bizarre to see a team as close to the playoffs as Blackburn, who looked to be quite so on the beach, for want of a better cliche. It really did feel a bit like that. So it was so hugely frustrating. And again, it now means it's just 2 wins in 15 for Rovers. It's yet another second half of the season collapse, as we've seen pretty much every year since they returned to the Championship. So that's 4 straight seasons now where they've had a pretty horrible run such as this, which has really cost them the chance of a playoff place. And, especially this season, when if you sort of look at the position they got themselves in, it was as good a chance as you felt they were ever going to have to get back in the Premier League. And it just looks to have gone now. I mean, there's still maybe a glimmer of hope. They're just 3 points off with 3 games to go, but other sides are going to pick up points. And, with sort of the performances that they're turning in, it feels really hard to sort of see how they're going to sort of overhaul that deficit at the minute. So, yeah, another really pretty bad weekend for Rovers here.
Yeah, momentum key as well, isn't it, at this time of the season? So, and just unfortunately, Blackburn just don't really have any, do they? And it's like you say, it seems to be a worrying trend the last few seasons as well. And Blackburn seems to have fallen away when they've got themselves into a decent position in the playoff race. Marcus, this brings us to first kind of agreement of this show. You put Mark Blackburn in your list too, haven't you?
Yeah, I think it speaks to the drop off that we've seen from Blackburn, that they are only still just 3 points off the playoffs, but we're effectively talking about it like their playoff hopes are over. As Toby mentioned, 2 wins in 15 league games at this stage of the season is hugely disappointing. It's a tough one really going into the summer. I'd be interested to know Toby's thoughts. I think I'm right in saying that Tony Mowbray's contract is up in the summer, and then there's of course a lot of player contracts expiring as well. So going into next season, the expectation is to be able to sort of replicate the challenge that they've put together this season maybe feels a little bit unrealistic. Obviously, we're talking before the summer transfer window, but if there is an expectation shift and given the form, do you think Tony Mowbray should be given a contract extension in the summer?
I personally, as I say, I can't really see that happening. If the board are reading the room, you look at the reaction to these sort of results. It wouldn't go down well with the vast majority of the fan base and a new deal for Mowbray. And I think as well, as I say, this 4 seasons now where we've seen these collapses that have seen Rovers drop away from the playoff places. All of those have been under Mowbray, and all of them have been, with sort of vastly different squads. There's been a significant player turnover at Ewood Park during those 4 years. So it's not as though you can say, oh, it's this particular group of players that haven't got this mindset. I think as well there might be some arguments about the crowd and the atmosphere that is perhaps being generated. But I think when fans have paid that much money over so long, and even behind closed doors last season, they were still putting the money into the streams and everything. And I think when they've seen this so many times and when they know what a chance this was, I think it's only natural that a bit of frustration is going to come through. And I think as I say, behind closed doors last season it happened, so it's not as though you can say, oh, it's something that is down to the atmosphere that is there at Ewood Park at the minute. And yeah, as you say, you're quite right. There are a lot of players out of contract. 5 senior members of the squad out of contract. 5 loan players who will be going back to their parent clubs potentially in the summer as well. Not to mention the almost inevitable interest is going to be in Ben Brereton. So, that's potentially 11 players at least that Rovers may be having to sort of replace in the summer. So that really sort of suggests maybe it could be, in that sense as well, a good time to bring in a new manager and allow him to put his own mark on the squad with his own players to bring in and fill those pretty significant voids that there's going to be at Ewood Park come the end of this season. So yeah, I think right now, unless there's something drastic changes in the final 3 games, which doesn't look likely, it would be a surprise to me if Tony Mowbray is at Ewood Park at the start of next season.
Yeah, it certainly could be a big summer change, couldn't it? At Blackburn. Keep with the losers from over Easter, staying in the Championship with your next one, Toby.
Yeah, my next one, I've gone for Barnsley. Not quite mathematically down yet, but they're as good as now after those results at the weekend. In fairness, a point against Swansea wasn't terrible on paper, but when you sort of consider the fact that they really needed wins this weekend to keep themselves in with a chance of avoiding relegation, it just wasn't really enough, and it'll be particularly disappointing having gone ahead in that game as well. And then on the back of that, there was another big chance yesterday at home to, as I say, Peterborough, another side who were right in that mix, who Barnsley, if they were going to be targeting a win, that was going to be one of the games they were going to surely be aiming for, and they just couldn't get anything out of that. Whereas had they done that, then with the game in hand that they also have on Reading, it would still have given them a bit of a chance and a bit of hope that they might have been able to just about drag themselves out of it. But as I say, it looks incredibly unlikely now. It will need something of a remarkable turnaround for the Tykes not to be playing League One football next season, which I think is going to be disappointing for them, given sort of the position, as I say, they got themselves into at Swansea, and then sort of the circumstances that surrounded a home game against another team who really looked, to all intents and purposes, to have been down and again, would potentially have been as good as down had they lost yesterday. So yeah, massive opportunity missed for Barnsley in my eyes.
Yeah, it certainly does look like the writing's on the wall now, doesn't it, for Barnsley in terms of their likely relegation to League One. Speaking of relegation, Marcus, will continue that theme on, but we're talking about a team in League One themselves. Might not be for much longer though, given the way their Easter period went.
Yeah, a really gut-crushing, spirit-crushing bank holiday weekend for AFC Wimbledon. 26 winless now, although there were some signs of hope, some glimmers of hope in the first few games under Mark Bowen. So to go to already relegated Crewe Alexandra and lose 3-1, and they were dominated as well, is a real disaster of a performance in a game, to be honest. Very tricky to make a case for them trying to stay up after that. They do go to Fleetwood, a huge game that we've mentioned earlier on, next up, but due to their goal difference, I've tried to work out some permutations that they really do need to win that game. If they take a draw at Fleetwood and Gillingham and Morecambe's results do go in their favour, which it could even be unlikely, then they'd need an 8-goal swing in goal difference going into the final day to save them, which of course is unlikely. So it is must win at Fleetwood, or they are all but down. And then it just had to be Adebayo Akinfenwa, didn't it, to score a late equaliser. Another one that really pulls on the heartstrings for Wimbledon fans, leading for so long, almost an hour in that game, hoping to end the extremely long wait for victory. And then former talisman Akinfenwa pops up at the back post to score an equaliser, and the run drags on. Going into that game, a draw at home to Wickham, given where they are in the tables, probably quite a good result, but given Wimbledon's situation, it's looking very desperate. And that loss at Crewe in particular is a match that you thought the small positive strides that they seem to make under Bowen should be able to sort of push them on the right side of that one. Of course, Crewe playing with the freedom of knowing that they're already down and a new manager in Alex Morris as well, but that really was a really disappointing result to go down 3-1 in the manner that they did as well. So a really disappointing weekend that for me has all but confirmed Wimbledon's relegation from League One. They've been flirting with this for quite a few years now. Obviously started the season really well before this incredible sort of slide down the table. So there was has to be some acceptance, really, I think, after the bank holiday weekend at Wimbledon. But it's the way that they've lost them in particular that makes it really painful. Of course, losing to a side already relegated, and then a late equaliser from one of your former heroes to sort of have them staring down the barrel of relegation to the fourth tier at this stage.
Yeah, certainly not looking good for Wimbledon. The fewest wins they've recorded in the league, even less than Crewe and Doncaster. They've drawn more games than anyone else in the division. It's not hard to see where things have gone wrong for them this season. Again, summed up by a late draw against Wickham yesterday. Keeping with the losers, just before we go, there's one more team to talk about, even though both of you still need to speak, and that's Oldham Athletic. Toby, we'll come to you first of all. Similar to Wimbledon in many respects, it kind of looks like Oldham are facing the drop out of the Football League now, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's there's been glimmers of hope at times since John Sheridan has come back in at Boundary Park. There was an excellent sort of run when he first took over, where you really thought they could actually do this, but they've just not been able to sort of maintain that over the course of the whole second half of the season. And it does feel like the writing is on the wall now with those back-to-back defeats over the weekend. I mean, in fairness to Oldham, there were two really tricky fixtures for them to get against two promotion-chasing sides in Northampton and Forest Green. Not easy games for anyone in their sort of position. So perhaps not a surprise that there's two straight defeats. But, going into that Forest Green game yesterday, after what they'd seen Barrow do to them on the Friday, as we've already mentioned, that might have given them a glimmer of hope, perhaps, that they could really sort of, go there, put the pressure on and do the same. But they just weren't able to do that. And as Marcus touched on with Barrow and Stevenage, with them now both getting 4 points from their 2 games over the weekend, while Oldham drew a blank. It's now, 4 points adrift that Oldham are of those two in the battle to avoid relegation. Barrow and Stevenage both got games in hand as well, so there's an opportunity for them to open up a gap. And you look at Oldham's fixtures still to come. They've got 2 teams next up who are still in that fight for promotion in Salford and Tranmere, and then a Crawley side who on the final day of the season, who by then their season should be over. But as I say, with Oldham already 4 points adrift, it means that even a win there, if they can't get anything from those other games, would already not be enough. So it just looks like it's starting to become a bit unassailable now for Oldham in terms of their efforts to stay in the Football League.
Yeah, so it does. Marcus, incredible, really, isn't it? Oldham, a Premier League team, in the early years of when the top flight was rebranded, and now we're looking at them quite possibly being a non-league side.
Yeah, they'd be the first one of that ilk. It's a really sad state of affairs at Boundary Park at the moment. I think John Sheridan still deserves credit for the job that he's done. To give them hope at this stage is something that has taken a lot, given where he picked them up from. And we've seen the strength of the National League in recent years. So it does feel like one of the worst possible times it can be to fall into that 5th division. So, yeah, it's looking really bleak for Oldham. As Toby mentioned, that final trio, Salford, Tranmere, Crawley, it couldn't really get much more difficult, to be honest. 2 playoff chasers, and then Crawley, there's one of the form sides in the league at the moment. They'll need a minimum of 5 points because of goal difference. Where that comes from, I don't really know, to be honest. Losing Carl Pierre Gianni was sent off against Northampton in the home game, which was a match they really had to take something from, given how tough their running is, and of course missed him in the Forest Green game. Didn't expect the league leaders to have such a huge say on the relegation battle, but that's how it's sort of what's ended up happening, with Barrow taking 3 points off them and Oldham 0. So yeah, a really tough bank holiday for Oldham. There is hope. The club's for sale, that next season they could be heading in a new direction with some new players. It'd definitely be an attractive club looking at the size of it. And with less financial constraints in the National League, if they are able to get a new takeover through in the summer, then there could be hope. There could be some more positive storylines about them next season. But no, 4 points adrift at this stage. It is looking, very concerning. It's tough to sort of generate some positivity at Boundary Park in the final 3 games, but that's what Sheridan's got to try and do. As Toby said, the writing's on the wall.
Yeah, Oldham's certainly right up against it now, aren't they, in the ahead of the final few games of the League 2 campaign. That's it for the debate on Football League World TV today, and that's it for the broadcasts that are going to be happening on the channel as well for today too. Toby, Mark, it's great to get your thoughts on the Easter action. Some really interesting stuff then, some really dramatic results as well over the course of the last few days. Just before we leave you, a quick plug for Football League or TV on YouTube. If you can subscribe to the channel, that'd be greatly appreciated. And do like this video as well. That'd be greatly appreciated too from all of us here at Football League. But for myself, Toby and Marcus, it's bye for now.